Hello and welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I am on with a very special guest. I have Elizabeth Milian, who's a first generation professional and passionate trademark attorney. She's also an entrepreneur and a devoted mother who is actively shaping the world she wants her children to inherit through her work in advocacy. I love that. With a deep appreciation for art, fashion, and business, Elizabeth sees trademarks as lasting symbols, especially impactful for inspiring women to pursue their dreams. Elizabeth also sits on the board of the Lucy Project. I've heard of that, an initiative for kids with learning difficulties such as dyslexia, like her son. And as a committed parent, she navigates the complexities of a career in law, understanding that the profound impact her actions will have on future generations. Rooted in her role as a mother, she instills in her children what it means to have resilience and determination, setting a powerful example for them to follow. I love that. Welcome, Elizabeth. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Okay, let's jump in. I always ask my guests to give me their favorite book or one that made a great impact. I know it can be hard, but anything that you feel my listeners should take with them, it could be a parenting book, it could be a fun book, anything that you really enjoyed and that has made an impact for you.
This is a great question. I read a lot of books. It's one of my favorite things to do. So, in thinking about this question, I wanted to share something that I felt was useful for moms and women in business. So, I recently read a book that was very impactful for me, and it was called The Selling Staircase by Nikki Rausch. She's a sales professional. And I don't know if other people can relate to this. Sales was not something that I learned in school at any point. And it's not an intuitive process. So I was struggling with it a little bit when I first opened my law firm. And to be fully frank, until I became a business owner, it wasn't even on my radar. So when we started our business, I realized I need to understand better how to manage a sales process. So I turned to books because that's how I learn. And I found Nikki. She's a sales professional. Her book is very helpful. It's very strategic and easy to follow. There is a five-step process, which is called the staircase. And the main issue it addresses in the book is how do you approach sales? What is your mindset? How do you do this in a way that feels authentic and not salesy? And that was really important for me. So it's my number one book since I picked it up. And I like to share it because I think a lot of people sometimes feel that sales is uncomfortable, and it doesn't have to be.
I love that. Yes, I don't think that one has come up yet. I'm trying to remember. I've asked this question, I think, on every podcast, and I think you're going to be like episode 200 something or maybe two something. I know that's kind of
That's great.
crazy, but I don't
Yeah.
know if that has ever come up. So I think to your point, and we'll get into your story and all the things because I'm fascinated with your approach with trademark law. And like you said, of leaving that legacy and what it means to have symbols. I actually just trademarked the Motherhood Village, so I'm waiting to hear back. So crossing fingers.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I think there is something to say that when we become business owners, I know for me, who comes from the corporate side, I'm used to supporting entrepreneurs, I'm used to
Right.
supporting businesses. So to switch that mindset has been extremely difficult and is still kind of in a certain way. So thank you for sharing that because I'd love to check that out. Okay. So let's jump in. As a first generation professional, you're a trademark attorney, you're an entrepreneur, and you're a devoted mother. I know this is probably a nuanced question and we get it a lot, but I think there's so many different roles. And because you're so intentional by saying that you want to leave this legacy, how do you kind of juggle the kind of different roles? You compartmentalize them because you have so many multifaceted roles of different things. And what strategies do you use and to ensure that all of your areas receive the attention that it deserves? And then we'll jump into your advocate work and all of that. But how do you really juggle and ensure that you're prioritizing what you need to prioritize and giving everything the attention that it needs?
So this is a question that I actually ask myself on a daily basis, which is, am I implementing the best steps for this stage of life, this season of life, in order to balance everything? And I think all moms can relate to this, which is we've got our professional hats and we've got our family hat, and we're pulled in many different directions. Every direction is important, and we want to honor each direction in our life. So I've been trying different things. And what I like to keep in mind is to give myself grace. And I hope other women give themselves grace as well, because this is not a science. It's something that we have to try out different techniques. And then we have to assess whether those techniques are really serving us. So, one of the things I just started doing this week, which I'm excited about, is I am someone that puts their alarm on their phone. The phone's on the bedside table. So I would wake up in the morning, and before even getting out of bed, I was looking at my work emails. And this just seemed normal to me. So I realized I was doing myself a disservice. And another female attorney actually said to me, I have a challenge for you. Why don't you not get on your email until you've had a healthy breakfast and you've moved your body? And she wasn't talking about an exercise class, right? Like that would be great. But she was saying, walk around your house, have a glass of water, then you can check your emails. And that seemed hard at first, but I've tried it and it's really making an impact. So, something that simple, which is put yourself first, whether it's have a glass of water, have breakfast, and then you can focus on things that do need your attention. So I'm constantly juggling that. I went to a meeting this morning of other women, other moms in business, and it was one of our conversation topics, which is as your kids are getting older, the baby stage looks different from middle school, looks different from high school. And so we're constantly taking new techniques and adapting. But the number one thing we agreed on is be kind to yourself and extend yourself grace. We're all doing the best we can.
I love that because I think my friend and I talk about this often, and it is a question I do ask. I don't want to say often as well, but it comes up. And like I said, I was more intentional about asking you because I felt like I know, it's in your bio. You're like, listen, I'm a devoted mother. I want to make sure I'm leaving this legacy. So your work is just as important as,
Yes.
being a mother to you. I felt it was important to kind of hit it out the gate with that question. But my girlfriend
Sure.
and I talk about it often where I think sometimes online we get so inundated with like videos of like, oh, you need to rest. No, you need to hustle. And you're like, well, which
Yes.
should I do? Because this is what our brain is seeing, the images. When oftentimes, to your point, if you just sat and say, what does Elizabeth need right now? What does Nicole need right now? What is the stage of my life? What do my children need right now? What does my husband need right now? Like that is the answer you'll get. When my son was born and I was breastfeeding and a working mom, that was my choice. I wanted to do the night feed. So I knew, okay, Nicole, you can't stay up late. You have to go to bed
Right.
early when you can because I knew I'd get up in the middle of the night and I needed that rest. But I also knew it wasn't going to last forever. So I think to your point, giving yourself grace and just kind of taking each season as it is important, but reflecting on it, whether it's getting up in the morning earlier and having a pause and say, okay, what do I need today? What does my family need of me? I think is extremely important because every stage of your business looks different. If you are a business owner, maybe even corporate career, if you're a stay-at-home mom and your kids, whatever that is, even with your relationship with your husband and your friends. So it's kind of assessing where you are at that moment. So I love that kind of
Yes.
feedback. So I want to talk about the Lucy Project before we get into your work as a trademark attorney and the inspiration behind that. I'm familiar with the Lucy Project. I actually had a guest on my podcast who had mentioned it. That's why I know it's I'm familiar with it. Talk to my listeners who are unfamiliar about what it is and why are you so passionate about advocating for it.
Sure. And I love the Lucy Project. And I am so happy that you asked me this question because I enjoy sharing this information with other moms, other families who need to know. So, the Lucy Project is a local, privately run nonprofit that serves children and families in Miami Dade. And this particular organization was started just a few years ago, and it's really built a lot of momentum. It's a nonprofit that's very close to my heart because it is supporting children and families in our community. And these are children who are struggling to read and who need evidence based literacy interventions. This nonprofit provides them access, full and fair access to literacy interventions. And on a personal level, I do have a son that was diagnosed with dyslexia. And it was a term that growing up I was familiar with. I had never researched, I didn't really know what it was about. So when we got his diagnosis, as a mother, I was really scared. I didn't know where to turn, I didn't know how to get him the help he needed. Thank God the Lucy Project is there. I got on their website, so many resources. I immediately was able to orient myself in terms of what are some of the next steps that we should be looking at? What should we be considering for our child? And I think every parent really wants to find the right resources for their child. Reading, it happens to be one of my hobbies, but we rely so much on it in our daily lives. Sometimes I'm not sure that we even realize how much we depend upon being able to read and decode words. And what I found in my search for my son is that the interventions, which are absolutely necessary, are cost prohibitive. So you could be a working family with two parents and it's still inaccessible in terms of the price. So, one of the things that the Lucy Project is doing is that they are bringing trained educators into Title I schools in Miami-Dade, and they are offering free in school programs, which are game changers. Then they have another piece, which is affordable outside of school reading remediation, again, with trained educators. And this really makes literacy accessible to all. So, on a bigger scale, I hope to see in every county at some point across the United States similar programs because literacy impacts all of us, whether it's your child or someone you know. We all need to step in and try to support this for children.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Learning Lab, but they're
Yes,
Broward.
yes,
And Ali Young was on my podcast, and she had basically said this quote that was like, illiteracy is like on the path to prison, right? Like
it
people
is.
who can't read, like that is so
Yeah,
true. And it's something that we do take for granted. I love reading as well. And because there is so much shame, I think, with the connotation of our generation of knowing, like you said, when you hear of dyslexia, you're like, whoa, and that's why the conversation with Ali was so important because we were really trying to break down some of the stigmas and the misconceptions. Like, no, it's not a bad word. It's just like anything
no,
else. The brain is just thinking differently. That's all it is. But
exactly.
the connotation was there. And I think because years ago, I'll age ourselves. I think we're around this age, but either still the millennial moms of saying that we just didn't know, and now we do. But I think something like the Lucy Project is so special because, like you said, if you have parents who come from two-income households and they also can't afford the resources, imagine those that do come from the Title I schools or really the single
Exactly.
moms or moms that don't. It's even
Exactly.
more so. And then I think if we don't offer those programs, then to your point, then that's how we know it leads to children that maybe drop out of school and then go with the wrong crowd or doing things that they shouldn't be doing or a life of crime because they didn't know how to read like that. When you think
Yes.
about it, that's like, wow, but there's so much shame and thing that comes with that.
It's so true. And it really, I see that it impacts self esteem in children because they understand they have a learning difference. They're not really sure why. They know that they feel different from their classmates. And so you really have to be very careful and try to catch it early, try to offer support early because it's nothing that they did. They
Yes.
were born this way, and it's something that we can really make a big impact in supporting. So I encourage everyone check out the webpage. We're really doing some really great work over there.
Love it. I can't wait to share more about it. Okay. So now let's get into trademark and all the
Sure.
things trademark. So like I said, I just recently went in to file my trademark and this was before I connected with you, but my attorney, we've just been working on some things, my operating agreement, because I'm working on some things in the background with the Motherhood Village. And it was really important to trademark. So I want you to talk to those who are like, okay, yeah, we get it. Trademark is a symbol and it means this. Very high level. What is it? And why are you so passionate about using that quote of saying that trademark are lasting symbols that can inspire women to pursue their dreams? And can you share a specific story that maybe where a trademark or a woman who has trademarked their company, brand, service, whatever it was, has had a profound impact on them and how that kind of all aligns with your broad mission? So two questions. One, kind of break down what is trademark law and is it different than copyright? And then why you find it as something for women to use to pursue their dreams.
Sure. Thank you. So I could talk about trademarks and asset protection and women in business all day. I think about this in my spare time, and I think it's so important. I think that trademarks are really the unsung heroes of business, really. So, what is a trademark? At a very fundamental level, a trademark is a source identifier. You can trademark a word, a slogan, a design. It's something that is out in the public that helps the public identify your product or service with your business. And so, very famous trademarks would be I use an Apple computer. So, the Apple design, people see that, they immediately know which company we're talking about. And so, I think on a day to day basis, most people are familiar with trademarks. They're just not realizing that it's a trademarked element. So copyrights are a little bit different. Copyright is protecting artistic output. So a great example of copyright could be song lyrics. You can also copyright software code if you're writing a software program. And trademarks are really protecting the imagery and the words. So it's a right hand, left hand. They're similar, but they're not the same. And so some of the trademark stories, I have a daughter who's a teenager. She is a big Taylor Swift fan. And so I like to talk to her about Taylor Swift specifically because I see Taylor Swift doing some very smart, sophisticated things around trademark planning. She has, as of March of this year, at least 140 registered trademarks. And she has very intentionally been building her trademark portfolio for a number of years. And so what she's doing, she has a whole catalog of things she's trademarked, but titles of her album, her name, her concert names, her fan club. So she's got trademarks on everything. And she's a very savvy businesswoman. And so what I love about this is that the younger generation can relate to someone like her and say, she's doing something really smart. She's building her legacy. She's building her commercial empire. And so I like to remind my daughter that you can learn from women like this. She's not just a great artist, she's a savvy businesswoman. So I find it appealing on that level. And in terms of women in business that I have worked with myself, because Taylor is not my client, as much as I would love that. I mean, she'd be a dream client. She's not my client. So I do have a client who is a tech founder here in Miami, and she is doing some really exciting things. So as a business owner, I have to create graphics for social media, which is not my area of expertise at all. And so I would get on Canva and I would make really terrible graphics. And it would take me a long time to do this. And I met her. She has a tech startup and they produce high end, beautiful aesthetic graphics. And they can do all the heavy lifting on that for you in a matter of seconds. They utilize AI, they take in all of your branding, and they can provide a done for you service, which is affordable and fast. So I'm really excited to see some of the entrepreneurs who are addressing pain points that business owners have. And her software is called Smartsy. So we were recently working on her trademark. And trademarks to me are really for everybody. So you have someone like Taylor Swift, who is an international name. And then you have women who are running businesses who are not yet national or international names. So it's accessible,
Yes.
but these women, what they have in common is they're taking the strategic steps to build their future legacy. And they realize that their brand is an asset. It has value, whether you're looking to license, whether you're looking to sell your business, expand your business. What you're looking for is protection around your name and your creative assets. And so that is why, for me, trademarks, if you're looking for the long game, if you're looking for something that can grow with you, you should be looking at intellectual property protection.
I love that. And I was going to ask for you, but I think you pretty much did. But maybe if you want to maybe just elaborate a bit more on that of like why you keep saying protecting your legacy and how
Right.
come there is such a correlation between what this trademark and the power of it. And and you can talk about maybe even adding like certain things. Like I've added the little TM behind like
Mm-hmm.
the Motherhood Village to start just doing that and hoping
Sure.
to manifest it at some point. And that was just recommended to me, I think, when I first started. But my whole point is maybe putting the alignment between the trademark and really why is it building a legacy and the true importance of it. Because I think a lot of times similar to like estate planning, I think the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I say that is because I'm like, I think there's these big words that we think only the wealthy can have. So if you're a wealthy family,
Sure.
you should be doing estate planning. If you're a wealthy business owner that's made it, then you can trademark, right? Like I think there are these misconceptions that we have and we correlate it with wealth or we correlate it with success. So maybe just break down why it's so important and that misconception that no, you don't have to be the successful business owner, but if you are strategically planning of like what is this going to be, that it's so important to have that trademark. Maybe just kind of put that in notion
Yeah,
into place.
absolutely. So I recently spoke with a woman, and she's not my client, but she shared a story with me, which is unfortunately not uncommon. And the story was a number of years ago, she spoke to a business attorney, not a trademark attorney, a business attorney. And this attorney said to her, "You're just starting out. You don't need to spend money or time trying to protect your name and your brand because you don't know if you're going to be in business a year from now or 2 years from now." And so she took that to heart. She said, "I spoke to an attorney. He told me not to worry." And lo and behold, years down the line, she is running a successful business. She started looking into trademarking her name, and that name was taken. And so she was in the difficult position of saying, "I have a reputation, I have a loyal client base, and I'm known for this business I've built. I put my heart into this for years, and I no longer can use my name." Somebody who has a trademark can send me a cease and desist letter and say, "Stop using this name." And so trademarks are important because you're looking for enforceability. You're also looking for, we're all working in the digital space these days. So the minute you're on social media or you're online with your website or YouTube, people, you don't know who's got eyes on your product, right? And so you want to protect your hard work and you want to make sure there's no confusion around what you're offering and building from what someone else is doing. And so part of that looks like protecting yourself from copycats. So, for example, with your podcast, the TM symbol, I like that you did that because it puts the public on notice that you are staking out the claim to your name. And once you do get approved for your trademark registration, you're going to have the circle in the R. And so that is an indicator to the public that you are you have a registered trademark. So I love that you did that. That's very important. Podcasts, that's a great category to obtain a trademark for. And you're building a community. Your community, you want them to trust in your brand and you want them to be loyal to your brand. So trademark protection definitely fits in there. In terms of how is it similar to estate planning, I think it does fall into one of those things where people know that they should have it. It's a good thing to have and they need it, but it may not feel immediate in the moment.
Yes.
So sometimes it's a little harder to get there and say, "Oh, it's on your to-do list for a long time." But increasingly, now that people are in the digital space more and more, trademark registrations are going up. There is much more movement and interest in getting a trademark protection. And so on a regular basis, I do have to have conversations with people and tell them this name is not available for use. You might have to rebrand.
I think this conversation is so important because I do have a lot of women in my community that are looking to start a business. And I think if there's one thing to get from that, number one, I know we just put it in, and I think she said it can take up to 8 months to hear something back. So I don't know if
Oh,
that
yeah.
timeline fits. Like
Yeah,
if
that's
that's how
accurate.
long of the
It is.
applications.
Yes.
So I think anyone listening to this, if you are looking to start a business, it's almost like business plan slash work with the trademark attorney, even if it's just a consultation to see if you could use that
Yes.
name. Because to your point, you could be under this name, and then 3 years in, you're finally like, just like you were giving the example, and then now the name's not ready to use, and you have to make that decision. Okay, do you keep it? Do you risk getting sued for all the things? So I think you broke it down very well, and I just love your passion for that. So you have 3 daughters, and I love how you're empowering them to see that, especially with the Taylor Swift example. I love that. You had mentioned that you're coming from a background with preset gender roles and you attended
Yes.
an all-girls school. How did those experiences influence your professional journey, plus your advocacy work? And then how do you teach resilience and determination to your daughters? And what lessons do you hope that they would take away from the experience that you have and in the work that you do?
Sure. So I grew up in a family in the Midwest, a very traditional, old school family.
Mhm.
So I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. It may as well have been 1950 in our house. The gender roles were there. And so I am familiar with what that's like and what the expectations for women are in a traditional family. And so it was really interesting to me. I ended up in an all girls high school, and then I went on to an all women's college in New York City. And I think my parents were attracted to those because they said, all girls school, perfect. We're a traditional family. This is the way to go. And I don't know that they could appreciate that being surrounded by women in community is electrifying. It's inspiring. And I feel very blessed because I was with a peer group in high school and then in college. These were women who had strong voices, they had opinions, and they were motivated to achieve their goals. And so I found that very inspiring because it opened up a whole new set of possibilities that I hadn't really been thinking of before. And so that was helpful to me because when I attended school in New York City, it's a metropolitan area. There are lots of opportunities, and you have to be ready to advocate for yourself. You have to be goal oriented and you have to be a self starter. And so I found that being in community with other women prepared me to take those next steps. So now, as a mother, I really want to pass that on to my children. I really want them to know your voice matters, your opinion matters, and you're going to try a lot of new things. But what you're doing is important, and I'm proud of you. And go out there and try new things. You're not stuck in a specific role. You can set goals that look different from what your family is expecting of you, and you can achieve those goals. And that's my message to any child coming up, which is find your passion, explore your passion, and figure out what works for you. You don't have to do what's expected of you. You can make your own path.
I love that. I think it's so timely because of what's going on in the world with all the gender stuff. But I think that's so impactful. And I know empowering gets used so often, but I think it is because a lot of times you can come from going to an all girl school and maybe coming from, or at least, like you said, of growing up where I didn't maybe appreciate those large settings of women coming together. I do have friends that I've been friends with since we're 12. So we're talking a long
Wow.
time that we're still
Yeah.
kind of in community, and friends that I've known from high school. So, 10 plus years, 15 plus years. But now that I am older, I appreciate that so much. So that's beautiful that you got that at such a young age and really felt that and said, no, listen, when we came together, like it was, like you said, electrifying. Like that's
Yes.
fantastic. The community I've created, it's electrifying. Actually, that's a great word because I'm often asked, I just posted about this. They're like, what is the Motherhood Village? And I'm like, really? Until you show up, like I
Yeah.
can't explain it. It's like it's like if you know, you know, if you don't, like all I can do is send you an invite. But I love that. It's
Yes.
electrifying. When women come together, it is. And I think when you can appreciate that's beautiful. But for you to get that at a young age in college and after all of that, I think is a fantastic, I don't want to say life lesson, but just something to learn early on, I think is very helpful because I think for a long time it was like, okay, I have my core circle, but I was
Sure.
still very much male dominated industries. I am an accountant, a guy's girl, whatever that means, like one of the guys. And I kind of put the girl thing to the side. And it's now that I'm older, now that I'm a mom, I appreciate it so much more. So that's awesome. You got that early on. And now you can, pass that down to your daughters.
Yes.
So before we part ways here, let people know how they can work with you, where they can find you online, social media, your website, and then we'll part ways with your final thoughts.
Okay, sounds good. So I would love to connect with anybody who is interested in speaking more about the Lucy Project, speaking about their business, trademarks. Would love to continue the conversation. So you can find me on Instagram at Simply Claims. I'm also on LinkedIn under my name, Elizabeth Milian. And I have a website, which is Elizabeth Milian Law. And I would love to hear from any of you. And if you have additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Awesome. And then I always allow my guests to share their final thoughts, anything that you want my listeners to take with them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I'm going to go with grace again because I came from this women's business meeting this morning, and everyone in that room was a high achieving, high performing woman, different industries, different stages of motherhood, and everybody was trying so hard. And I thought to myself, if we could just give ourselves more space, more grace, that might go a long way. So, whatever it is that you're doing, I hope you hold space to give yourself a pat on the back and just realize you're working really hard and it's appreciated.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming on, for sharing such great tips, and for breaking down trademark law and the work that you're doing with the Lucy Project. And continued blessings to you for love and light. Thank you.
Thank you.